reach the top somehow. I'll keep moving on. I won't stop now. I'll keep moving on till I reach the top somehow.
Hey. Yeah. So when I introduce, I'm by myself? Okay, but then you'll bring up the other two after the introduction.
That I will achieve.
Okay.
Cause I do the things I should. To my brethren, kind and good.
Okay.
So I'll keep moving on.
Okay, right.
I won't stop now. I'll keep moving on till I reach the top somehow.
Oh yes, my Straight Talk family, whenever you hear that theme song, you know it's time for another edition of Straight Talk, and time for me to bid you a very pleasant evening, my Straight Talk family, wherever you are in St. Kitts and or Nevis, and wherever you are throughout the entire Caribbean region. Straight Talk is a public service program, and this is for those who may be joining me for the first time. It's a public service program that facilitates and promotes all issues of national interest, be they legal, be they environmental, be they technological, social, economic, and or political issues. On Straight Talk, you do have a forum to express yourselves freely. Let us in the process continue to keep St. Kitts and Nevis as one of the freest countries in the entire world. On this program, we try to raise the level of national consciousness. We try to raise the level of national discourse by alerting our people to their rights, to their responsibilities, and certainly to their obligations. My name is Ian Patches Liburd, and I give Almighty God thanks for blessing me with yet another opportunity to join you in conversation on yet another occasion. And how can I forget my family in the diaspora, my Straight Talk family in the Kittitian and Nevian diaspora, who are all logged on the World Wide Web. On the World Wide Web, some of you are in Africa, some of you are in Asia, there's some of you in Europe, and there are a whole lot of you all over North America. So I'm at liberty to say good night. I can say good morning, and certainly I can say good afternoon, because one of such greetings will be applicable to the region in which you now find yourselves. And for the first timers as well, Straight Talk is a participative program. By that I mean we entertain your calls, we entertain your emails. And if you're so minded to call, we do have our access numbers, which are 869-663-6672, which is the local number. Those of you calling locally, just 663-6672. And overseas, you can access the program via 646-829-6672. And there are some who just like the cloak of anonymity. So I give you the opportunity to access the email platform, which is zizstraighttalk@gmail.com. And tonight, I do have a special guest for us tonight. And we won't hesitate. We will go directly to our special guest, who is Mr. Les Khan. And Les Khan is, in fact, the Chief Executive Officer of the St. Kitts and Nevis Citizenship by Investment Unit. And Les is going to be with us tonight for the entire program, and we thought we should really introduce Les without much hesitation. Les is originally from Trinidad and Tobago, and he's been all over the world as a professional. He has, from my own research, over 20 years of experience within large financial and risk management organizations. And Les, beg your pardon, I believe, was headhunted to revamp the Citizenship by Investment program right here in St. Kitts. And perhaps I will give Les this opportunity to say good night and to tell the world who is Les Khan. Good night, Les.
Good night, and thank you, Patches. Thank you for having me on your show. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to talk about myself, talk about the program primarily. The Citizenship by Investment program is obviously one of the most important programs in the world. But first, let's talk about myself. I've traveled around the world, as you've said. I've lived in Australia, in India, in Singapore, and in the US for a number of years in the investment banking area. I've been involved in due diligence with IPSA, and many of you may be aware that IPSA is one of the due diligence companies that was originally being used in St. Kitts and Nevis. Since 2014, IPSA was recruited and hired to do a look back or a research on the CBI program. At that point in time, we made around 21 recommendations to the previous administration. And when the Unity government took over in 2015, we were brought back in to implement the 21 recommendations, which covered a wide array of initiatives to improve the program. During that time, we revamped the program, and subsequently I was hired to take over the unit as the CEO. We then rebranded the unit, and it became the Platinum brand just because of the initiatives we had taken. We were the first in technology to implement the 24/7 program. We had improved our due diligence. We had increased our market share and established significant relationships with our international partners. So the program has been through a number of iterations or evolutions as time progressed. Many of you may recall that around 2016, 2017, we introduced the Hurricane Relief Fund. That was one of the changes we made. We subsequently moved on after the Hurricane Fund. We adjusted the SIDF, which was the original contribution method at the time, and we created the Sustainable Growth Fund. The Sustainable Growth Fund, the limited time offer was another innovation that we had, because as we looked to our market share, as we looked to opportunities, we made adjustments. We were identified as the most innovative program in the CBI industry for a number of years, and most recently we were ranked number 1 in the CBI program. So we have taken the program through a number of changes and a number of competitive positions. Right now, we, St. Kitts and Nevis, has about 50 to 60% of the market share in the world in CBI, and that's within the Caribbean and even ahead of some of the other countries. So we have a very strong program. Our agents support us around the world, and it takes a lot of effort to maintain the standard and to maintain the competitive advantage that we have. So that's a little about the CBI program and how we are where we are today. Obviously, there are a number of products that we offer and that we currently offer. So back in 2014, 2013, around that period in time, St. Kitts-Nevis was the only program in the world. And the real estate option at that point in time and the SIDF were the only products that were being offered. So at that point in time, the real estate option for building of hotels was a minimum of 400,000. And the SIDF was 250,000. So as we progressed into 2016 and 2017, we modified the real estate option, and we created what we call splits. So we allowed, based on market conditions and by the prompting of a number of real estate developers, we split the 400,000 into two 200,000s. So for a unit of 400, we were now being able to offer two families on a shared title. Now, that has evolved into shares. So what has happened is a number of developers have now taken those splits and they sell them as shares under their development. And the share option is different from the $400,000 option, because the $400,000 you have to maintain it for 5 years before you can sell it. With a share option, you have the ability to sell only after 7 years. So during that period, we also made some regulatory changes in terms of the laws around real estate. It took us a while, but we modified our program, our Escrow bill, as we call it, to ensure that developers were able to sell their shares, but could only have the funds released out of escrow based on a payout schedule. This is the law, and this is what we follow right now. Putting that law into place created a huge influx in the market, because there was a window that we allowed the developers to get their escrow schedules in place. And escrow schedules, I should advise you, is basically stating that it's an agreement between the developer and the client and an escrow agent, and it allows the client to feel comfortable that the building is going to be completed and that the funds will only come out of escrow based on the construction phases. So we've gone through that, and that has ensured the integrity of our program. We are the only island in the Caribbean that has an escrow bill, and therefore strengthens our program. And this is one of the reasons why we are called the Platinum brand. It's because of the initiatives that we have taken, not only from a competitive position, but from the position of strengthening what we do in the unit through escrow and through due diligence and so forth. As we evolved and the major developers completed or sold their shares, we became a little more innovative, and we thought about how could we do infrastructure projects under the CBI. This was a big gap after some research that I had done, this was a gap that we found, that there were a lot of initiatives coming to the government, but we could not put it under the CBI because the legislation was not there. So in 2021, we proposed that we implement what we call the alternative investment option. And the alternative investment option, again, it's bringing us to the forefront in innovation, because it's the first program that allows infrastructure projects to be built at no cost to the state, no cost to the government. And there are significant benefits to it. We have modified our program, our alternative investment option program, to ensure two things happen. One, that the state, the government, gets an asset, gets a product that is completed and that is built by a developer at his own cost and at his own risk. The second is that through the mechanism of sales for citizenship under the alternative investment option, the country is also able to obtain government fees, which could, in the case of some of these projects, could be hundreds of millions of US dollars over a period of time. So the alternative investment option gives us a double effect. One, the asset; two, the government fees, which allows the government to continue with its social programs, social economic initiatives. So that's where we are today in terms of the product, in terms of the citizenship by investment, and we continue to be successful in this market space at a time when agents are all being concerned about what's going on in the EU, in the US, in the political environment around. We continue to be strong in our market share.
You've said thank you very much, Les, for that introductory presentation, in that you've really given us a lot of food for thought in the process as well, in terms of the rebranding and the importance of the program. But there's some clarification I want you to provide as we go forward. And you mentioned as well that we rank #1, right, amongst countries, and I believe it was a production of the Financial Times, which is a top news outlet, ranked us highly. But
yes,
tell us, #1 amongst whom? Who are the other countries competing, and how? Among who and how?
Well, so the Financial Times does a survey on an annual basis, and it ranks the 13 CBI programs in the world, and that includes the 5 in the Caribbean. Part of their factors of consideration would be things like due diligence, efficiency, time in terms of processing, number of countries that we have visa-free access, so accessibility. These are just some of the factors that are taken into consideration by the Financial Times. And I'm pleased to say that in the last review, we were ranked #1 in a number of these categories, and overall in the survey in itself. For a number of years, we were ranked number 2, and we were always just edging up to the #1. So we're very pleased to be there at this point in time. And we continue to be innovative, we continue to be efficient, we continue to ensure that the program is as competitive as it can be, but stays as robust, as diligent, as secure as our international partners would like us to be.
You ranked number one. Who is number two? Which country is number two?
I think it's Dominica.
Dominica.
And yeah, so that would be one of those.
Okay, you mentioned due diligence several times, and you mentioned IPSA as well, which is one of the, I believe, international firms that deals with anti-money laundering, fraud investigations, and so on. That you, I believe, you held a top management post in that company, and you mentioned 2014. Not that you want to drive the car in the rearview mirror, but tell us where we came from in 2014. Was it then the issues of when we were labeled as attracting illicit actors and we lost our visa-free access to Canada and so on? Was that the period you're referring to, 2014?
Yeah, yes. And at that point in time, we had lost visa-free access to Canada, and there was a sanction against us, or against individuals having a St. Kitts passport in the U.S. The U.S. financial institutions put a warning against foreigners who had St. Kitts passports. So those were two hits that were taken at a time. And the intent was to review the overall process, review the program as a whole, and make recommendations for improvements.
So that's where the recommendations in terms of initiatives came from. Am I correct?
It was the start of the initiatives, yeah.
So you also mentioned Escrow, the Escrow bill, and that to the average man is a big word. And what is this Escrow? You put money in Escrow. Explain that for the average man, please.
Well, those businessmen who are doing construction and taking a loan from a bank will understand escrow, because a lot of times their funds have to go into escrow. Those individuals who are purchasing a home usually would have to put their funds in escrow before the title is transferred. So that would be a comparison of what that means. In terms of how the program was run at the time, the individuals were able to, an applicant was able to get his certificate of registration without funds staying in escrow. So what happened was that the developer had the money going in and out of an account, right? And that account was being maintained by his lawyer, so he had the ability to move the funds out, and there were no laws that tied him into construction. So what we had was a number of developers who were taking the funds out of escrow and not necessarily completing construction.
And that's...
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
So the law that we put in place basically reduced the number of lawyers who can do escrow. And we went from 65 or 70 lawyers who were able to do escrow to possibly 5 escrow agents. So currently, right now, we have 4 escrow agents. And that's because our escrow agents now are regulated by the FSRC, which is our financial regulatory body. So in order to become an escrow agent, first of all, you have to put up certain capital, you have to meet stringent requirements to be an escrow agent. So we've controlled that. The other part of controlling the overall escrow was the payout schedule. So after we set up the 4 or 5 escrow agents, the key was to ensure that construction is completed. And the way to do that was to implement a payout schedule that has to be approved through cabinet for each development. And that has tightened up what our developers can do in terms of construction and in terms of using the funds that are being contributed to them or being given to them by the clients.
Well, I know a little bit of construction and how it works. And you mentioned payout schedules. So are you saying now, as part of the escrow arrangements, there's a schedule of works and a schedule of payment? In other words, this construction starts a particular period at a particular stage, then you get payouts? That's how is it done? How is it done?
So, yeah, so let's say a client invests in a share or a condominium, and let's say it's 200,000. So at the time that the unit has gone through its due diligence, has gone through its process and approves the client now wants his certificate of registration, which entitles him to a passport. The unit will only release the certificate of registration when the funds are placed in escrow. Now, the developer will only get the funds out of escrow based on his levels of construction and the payout schedule that ties into that level of construction. So ultimately, it's the developer who's taking the risk. Once the funds are in escrow and the unit obtains a letter confirming the funds are in escrow, then the unit will release the CIU. I should make it very clear that the unit is not an escrow agent in itself. We're not party to the escrow agreement. We ensure that the documentation that we have, which is a purchase and sale agreement and an escrow agreement, are in place before we release the COR, and that we get confirmation from the escrow agent that the funds are in escrow.
But just for clarification though, are you intimating that you mentioned the certificate of registration, the COR, but in terms of the passport, is the passport a process even prior to completion of the construction? The
construction is tied into the escrow account.
Okay.
The passport is issued when the client's obligation and the developer's obligation has been met within the escrow law, which is the funds placed in escrow. We release the COR. The COR allows the client or his representative to file for a passport. Now, this is another point that I'd just like to clarify. The unit does not issue passports. So once we issue a certificate of registration, the unit's responsibility is complete. We've gone from taking the file from beginning to the end. We've ensured that the escrow is in place for the real estate option. If it's the Sustainable Growth Fund, we ensure that the funds come in to our account at the National Bank before we release the COR. So there are two avenues that would occur at that point in time.
Okay, now you mentioned, to use your words, the iterations and evolution of the program, and you cited the Hurricane Relief Fund, the moving from the SIDF and the Sustainable Growth Fund, and what's talked about most in recent time is the alternative, the AIO, alternative investment option. Now, even before I ask this question, I should get clarification from you in terms of the fees. How does government generate its revenue from this program? And having generated the revenue from the program, is all the revenue going into the consolidated fund? As we know, at the time, the SIDF was referred to as a private institution, a private company. What happens now? What is the exact disposition of all the revenue that is generated through or by the program?
Okay, so again, back in 2015, when the Unity Party took over the administration, one of the first things that was changed was that no funds went into the SIDF. All funds, all government fees, all fees collected through the SIDF at the time, and then subsequently the SGF and so on, go straight into the Accountant General's account and ultimately in the consolidated fund. I would like to differentiate. So with real estate fees, for every sale that a developer sells, be it a share, be it a unit, there are government fees applied to that. Again, a certificate of registration will not be released, and let me recap that, will not be released unless I have a confirmation of funds in escrow, a purchase and sale agreement, and that government fees have been paid. Those are the three things that must happen before a certificate of registration. So when we receive the government fees, it goes straight into the Accountant General's account, which is the consolidated fund. And those checks are payable to the Accountant General. So for real estate, that is what happens. On the SGF, the SIDF, the limited time offer, the hurricane fund, these funds will go into the units account at National Bank. And this is where we consolidate everything on a monthly basis, and we have to pay commissions to our agents and so forth. And then all of those funds go into the consolidated fund once a month. So the account at the National Bank for our funds, you can consider it an escrow account. It's where the funds are held until we move it into the Accountant General.
And you do that monthly?
And we do that monthly, yes.
And
for the SGF.
For the SIDF, it exists no more. Or does it?
In terms of the sale of SIDF and in terms of any funds on any of our contribution methods, doesn't go anywhere else other than into the Accountant General's account.
The alternative investment option is something new, and it continues to attract a lot of attention, including this.
The prison is budgeted at 5,500 passports are being sold for $2.4 billion to finance this project. Park Hyatt sold close to 300 shares. Close to 300 shares were allocated to Park Hyatt when Park Hyatt was being constructed, a five-star resort. Only 300 shares. And now for a prison, 5,500 shares. And again, you have to ask, who are the persons benefiting from the construction of this project?
Is that a fair question?
From the Citizenship by Investment Unit perspective, I think it needs clarifying, because I think a lot of the numbers are taken out of context. Let's go back to what the alternative investment option is and why it was created.
Please.
So the first thing is, under the alternative investment option, we created two categories of investment. One is, and I'll categorize it as privately funded, privately owned. This is where a developer builds the initiative that meets a government mandate, and he or she ultimately owns the initiative in the long term. There's no transfer over to the government. So if the first project that fell under this category would be the middle income homes, that's by the Liamega development project. So that falls under privately funded, privately owned. The developer is selling basically at real estate levels. The difference is that he's not building a hotel, and this is where it comes under the alternative investment option, because it allows us to allow the developer to capture some of his investments through the citizenship by investment unit while delivering on a government mandate. So that's the Liamega project. The second initiative would be privately funded, state-owned. The developer does not own the initiative. The developer starts putting the money up front and starts construction almost immediately. So that initiative would be the second one that we have. And the first project to be approved under that would be the new correctional facility. So based on the information that the clip that I just heard there, the thought is that there was an allocation of 5,500 shares, and that it's equal to 2.2 billion EC dollars. There's an assumption here that 2.2 billion EC dollars is being taken away from the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. There is no 2.2 billion dollars. There's 5,000, 5,500, whatever the number is in terms of the number of shares that have been allocated to assist the developer in recovering their investment. Now, to quote a number like $2.2 billion is basically misleading, in the sense that it's assuming that the developer is selling at $175,000. Now, the difference between the privately funded and the state-owned, the privately funded is at $200,000. The state-owned is at $175,000 for a family of 4. In both initiatives, two things happen, or one thing happens. One is that the developer, regardless of which side of the fence it is, pays government fees. So if we were to truly look at the new correctional facility and we look at how much money the country would actually get from that, it would be hundreds of millions of US dollars, multiply that by 2.6. So, and that would be over a period of 1, 2, 3 years, whatever it takes for the developer to be able to sell those, let's call it unit of investments, because they're not really shares. So $2.2 billion doesn't exist. It's never coming out of the government's coffers. Actually, there's money going into the government coffers. In the alternative investment option for the new correctional facility, and there would be others that would come along, the country gets an asset, an infrastructure asset, and one that they would not have been able to finance over a period of time. So, you know, I've been hearing the clips, I've been hearing the statements about, you know, the prison, the alternative, the new correctional facility is costing $2.2 billion. We need to break down the numbers to understand what is really happening. When an investor, when a developer gets a share, be it under the real estate side or be it under the alternative investment option, there are a number of factors that have to be taken into consideration. Number one is, what is the market condition? Where is he selling, or he or she is selling, and what price can he sell at? I can assure you that it's not $175,000 and it's not $200,000. So there are market conditions out there in the Middle East, in Russia when Russia is open, in China, and it's a very competitive market. We are competing with the likes of Dominica, Antigua, St. Lucia, Grenada, where the pricing is so tight that the developer has to take a deep discount on his sale price just to be able to sell and get some revenue for construction. I think when these proposals go forward to cabinet, and I need to stress this, the unit does not approve projects. I want to be, a lot of people say, well, let's kind of approve this, but the unit does not approve projects. The unit supports the recommendation based on its merits, but the initiative must go through SKIPPA, St. Kitts Investment Promotional Agency. And from their perspective, they are doing an analysis also of the project and are the ones responsible for writing the proposal and submitting it to cabinet on behalf of the developer. Cabinet then looks at the initiative, and both SKIPPA and myself may be called to cabinet to explain why we think that this initiative warrants X number of shares or units of investment. But then cabinet makes that decision, and then it moves on. So coming back to pricing now, and we talked about the 175,000. So there are deep discounts. The developer has to get enough money to build that initiative, and there's no way he's getting 100,000. There's no way he is getting 175,000 or 200,000. Based on competitiveness, some of those numbers are being driven down every day. But the developer still has the responsibility, regardless of the price, to ensure that the government fees are paid to the government. So whatever price they pay, there has to be a portion that goes to the government coffers. And that is where the government's revenue comes in.
So, Les, who fix these prices or these units of investment, I think is referred to them? Is it the developers or who does?
Well, first of all, the 200,000 for the, let's say the privately funded, privately owned, and the 175 for a family of 4, which is that those are the government prices. And those are what the government, based on our recommendations, have passed in legislation under the various SRNOs that that mandates the units, the sale price, and the government fees. So this is very straightforward. All right. What the developer, be it in the real estate piece and in the prison, what they can sell in the market is really up to the competition on what they're willing to take on that unit.
Okay.
Or unit of investment.
Now, in terms of the alternative investment option, specifically to the privately funded state-owned, it reminds me of the PPP option. Now, what mechanism, if there's any, in that arrangement that guarantees that the project will be completed?
Okay, in this particular initiative, one of the mandates of the approval was for the developer to ensure that there was a running balance of X millions of dollars in their account at the National Bank, so that we can ensure that they had the capital to continue construction. And this continues. But you have to remember that the developer is also putting out their money up front before sales. So there has been construction on this project for at least 6 months now, and I am aware of their project plan that I saw recently, where they have spent millions of dollars already before obtaining any of the revenue from their sales. So this was the reason why when it was recommended to have this initiative and to grant this initiative to that particular developer, that we ensure that there was the capital to ensure construction would start and would be able to complete based on the running balance in their accounts.
The other question that follows as well, Les, the alternative infrastructure option would target the correctional facility, other infrastructure projects. I think of a school, a hospital. Can the cabinet or the CIO or anyone for that matter dictate to an investor which project they want to invest in?
When you say investor, are you referring to an individual who's applying for citizenship or a developer?
Developer. That's like the one for the new correctional facility.
All right. I think it's important to know that these initiatives are coming forward now that we have the legislation in place. We did not have the legislation in place before, so none of them came forward. We also need to take into consideration, and what we did at the time was what came forward as an initiative. So the prison, I like to call it the new correctional facility, yes. Came forward, and there was one other that came forward at the time, and one was denied, and the other one, we said, yes, this makes sense, we need it, let's go with it. And that was a recommendation that we put to Cabinet to get approval. Now, Cabinet can determine and will determine what initiatives and what priorities would be taken for the future infrastructure projects. At this point in time, I have no knowledge of the priorities being set.
But that would depend on what comes forward from investors.
Absolutely, and which investor has the capital to run with the project. One of the things that we put into the legislation was to ensure that the investor could have up to 30% of capital at the time of starting the initiative. And I think this is something that is very critical in what we do going forward.
Okay, now, Les, I think we discussed this. There's no straight talk without participation from our listeners and our viewers. And but just before we go to the lines, I'll go to the lines after your response to this question, because mention was made of the allotment, if I can use that word, in respect of the Park Hyatt project and the 300 shares. Was that correct?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because we have to look at history. We have to look at what happened at the Park Hyatt time, and that would have been 2014, 2013, around that period in time there, where St. Kitts-Nevis was the only CBI program around. And the Park Hyatt and any other developer at that point in time would have been able to sell at 400,000. So the decisions to grant X number of shares at the Park Hyatt, let's say it was 300, I believe, close to that, at the time, was based on the 400,000 that they could get at that point in time. Things have evolved, and the market is no longer a 400,000 market. The market is no longer a St. Kitts market. There's competition, there are developments. Even the Park Hyatt developers range were one of those developers who worked with us and encouraged us to reduce our price from 400,000 to 200,000. And they did the same going into Dominica for the Kempinski Hotel or in Grenada for the Six Senses. So they determined also that the market was beginning to shrink, and people were offering huge discounts in the price that they got at that point in time. I should also mention that there are factors that have driven the price down, and one of the factors is the granting of fractions. Fractions were granted to a number of developers, which meant that they were given the ability to sell one unit 4 or 5 times or 6 times or 7 times, depending on whatever the recommendation was made and the decision was made. That allowed those developers to really reduce their price, to offer significant commissions to be able to sell in the marketplace but still complete their construction. As things evolved and more players came into the market, the agents started to push the developers down on their price because the agents wanted bigger commissions. And it has come to a point where even the clients now are shopping around between different agents who are then pressing the developers to reduce their prices and to stay competitive, or at least to accept whatever price is being given in the marketplace. This is an issue that our developers are facing on a day-to-day basis, because it's not competition amongst themselves only, it's competition amongst the other islands and the other developers out there who are offering the same product. And this is where the challenge is.
One final question. I said one before we go to the lines, but this just came to mind. Because you mentioned the Escrow bill earlier, and what took place after the change of government in 2015. But prior to 2015, there are some projects are still seemingly are apparently incomplete. What can be done, what will be done, what should be done in terms of completion of those projects?
I would like to say that a developer takes a risk when he goes into construction. And that risk is about the cost of construction, whether he'll have the capital and so on. But I think a lot of developers at the time made decisions based on the potential sales in CBI. And CBI sales dropped, especially in 2015 and into 2016. The CBI market in St. Kitts almost died, as many people would have recognized. And it took a lot of work out of us to bring the product back up to where it is and to ensure that our developers had an opportunity. But the opportunity is really for those developers who can complete construction. All right. So yes, there are some initiatives or some projects out there that cannot get completed, and it depends on, are they going for restructuring, did they take loans? These are business decisions, and the unit, and I'm sure the government and Skipper would support any recommendation to go forward. However, we have put in our escrow bill, we have ensured and tighten up our controls. So anyone coming back into the market need to be aware that there's a lot more stringent controls around construction and completion.
We've heard from you. Let's hear from our audience. I'm going to open the lines. My Street Talk family. Again, the numbers are 646-829-6672 or 869-663-6672. We do have our email address as well, that I said, straighttalk@gmail.com. I always find it imperative to implore you to respect others, and of course, to achieve that, you must first respect yourselves. Let us try to be fair to all concerned. Let us try to build goodwill and better friendships. Let us ensure that the things we say and or do will be beneficial to all concerned. And in the process of doing and or saying those things, let us, my Straight Talk people, try, our Straight Talk family, try to or strive to build a kinder, gentler St. Kitts and Nevis. It's 4 minutes before the 9 o'clock hour, and the event you have just joined us. We do have SKN, the indomitable Chief Executive Officer of the #1 citizenship by investment program in the world. And if you doubt me, check the Financial Times, my Straight Talk family. And it's 3 before 9 o'clock, we go to the lines. Call you live. Hello, caller. I'm not certain if we are hearing that caller, my Straight Dog family. If we are not, I will try one more time with that particular call. Let's try that call one more time. Yes, I'm hearing you, my people. I got all the messages, please. Yes, let's see if we get this call. I'll call you live. Hello, caller.
Okay, Patrick, yeah, I don't know what happened, but we have telephone problems all over the island. Now, so I was asking, November the 22nd, 2014, we were stopped, we were barred from going into Canada freely. And that was caused by a bad solicitor. And he said he paid $1 million US for a St. Kitts-Nevis diplomatic passport. Well, if he has a diplomatic passport, why was he going across the border? That's a question number one. And then here the other three now. Which kind of agent would do a thing like that? An illegal agent, or a legal agent, or a scamp will sell a passport for $1 million US. I listen up here. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, caller. I go back to the lines. Caller, you're live. Hello, caller. I think we are hearing that caller. Caller, let's try to get back again. In the meantime, I don't know if that's a rhetorical question. Les, do you want to address the first question in the meantime, caller? Could you try getting back again?
The only thing I'll have to say on that is that, that is history. That is 2014. And there was an assumption of diplomatic passports involved. It's very clear that the process would have to be followed in the current environment. Diplomatic passports are not issued by the Citizenship by Investment Unit, and any applicant applying for citizenship goes through several layers of due diligence, regardless of what he may pay to an agent. The level of due diligence now is about fivefold. We go through due diligence levels at the agent level. He has to ensure that he does know your client processes, anti-money laundering processes, he has to follow. And then it comes to our local service provider. And again, by legislation, our local service providers must do a due diligence report on the client for the same purpose, and that due diligence report must be submitted to the unit before it's a completed application. Once the unit obtains the application, we go through several layers of due diligence. One layer of due diligence would be going out to a company like Ipso, Exeger, BDO. These are numbers. We have about 6 or 7 due diligence companies that we use based on their specialties. And they will do research on the individual, inclusive of doing discrete inquiries on the individual on the ground, going to that individual's home front, doing inquiries in the public records, checking marriage certificates, birth certificates, education certificates, getting everything, any information that they could discreetly. In addition to that process, we now have, over the last number of years, we have a partnership with the CARICOM security agency, where all of our names go to our international partners. So the names are shared with the US, the UK, the Canada, the EU, and all names are scrubbed against various databases, inclusive of Interpol, inclusive of criminal records databases, money laundering databases. The region, I must say, is the only region that has a central database, and that all of the CBI programs, including ourselves, share this information with our international partners. And no decision in the Citizenship by Investment Unit in Kitts-Nevis is made without getting a clearance from the international partners.
And just for clarification, the CIU do not issue passports, period, be it diplomatic and otherwise. Am I correct?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay, let's go back to the lines. Call you live. Hello, call.
Good night. Good night, Patches.
Could you turn your radio down or your equipment down, please?
Yeah, I will.
Please.
Yeah. Okay, you hear me now?
Yes, we're hearing you. Good to hear you, sir.
Yeah. I want to ask the gentleman there, good night, sir, and thank you to come in to clear up certain things around the Federation here. Now, before you could get the okay to do what you want to build and what you want to pay for, who approved it? Just the Prime Minister alone, or the Cabinet, or the government? How we go? You know? If you want me to come up, then I come up, and you want to answer that, you can answer that. Another thing, what happened there with the little mishap and thing with Magadam and Bragadam and them? There was some members of government was involved in it for greed. And because they ain't got what they want, they cherry in Magadam at the US and the Canadian border and cause a hammock on us. Now, up to now, we ain't get back the status what the poor people at St. Kitts-Nevis deserve to jump on a plane and go to Canada freely. So if you could clear up any of that for me, I'd be more than glad. And thank you for coming. We welcome you. So thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, caller. And we ask our callers to please turn your equipment or your radio, whatever listening device you're using, please turn them off. Do you want to react to anything the caller said? Yes?
Well, the first question he asked specifically around the approval process of the project and the approval process, whether it's a prime minister or otherwise. The process, as I described, is very straightforward. A proposal is made to Skipper, and with review by myself, the unit, and Skipper, we then ask questions, we challenge the proposals, and we try to get as much information as we can to advise Cabinet on the recommendation that is being put forward. Again, the unit does not make decisions, neither does Skipper make decisions. Our job is to get as much information as possible to provide to Cabinet so that Cabinet can make the decision.
Okay.
And in all of these initiatives, those procedures are followed.
Hey, caller, you're live. Hello, caller. I'm not hearing that caller. Yes, but again, as we wait for the callers, Les, again, the unit along or in concert, I should say, with Skipper, is it fair to say, just make the recommendations to the Cabinet? Am I correct?
Absolutely. Yes, yes.
Now, there's a message
to Cabinet.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying we give the facts to Cabinet.
Okay.
For their consideration.
Caller, are you live? Are you the caller? Okay. I'm not hearing these overseas callers. Let's see what we can do to sort that out. We should have done something on that. But in the meantime, though, in terms of the alternative investment option, what would you say, though, while we sort out the lines there, Les, as head of the CIU, what impact do you see when these false statements are made? What impact they do have on the unit?
Very good question. The implication is that while we may be talking about a local article, a local report, everything that we do in St. Kitts is taken into context by our agents and our applicants overseas, and has a significant impact on whether there is confidence in our program. One of the things we have spent a lot of time on is ensuring our agents and our clients that we're a stable environment, that St. Kitts and Nevis will continue processing applications, that we're efficient in what we do. And any noise that suggests that a product, be it a development or otherwise, is not one that the overall government supports, will have a significant impact on our agents bringing files to us, and ultimately has a significant impact on the revenue stream that will be generated through these products. So yes, there always is noise, and from my perspective and the unit's perspective, I have to say that my biggest fear and concern with the noise that we're hearing is that our agents will start having an impact, because we're seeing articles that are now percolating within the Middle East, for example, and that's one of our biggest markets. And people get concerned when they hear about any noise coming out of any of the programs. So we have to be very careful and understand that whatever we say and do impacts the program and impacts the revenue stream of the government and ultimately the people of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Well, you could not have said it better in terms of these irresponsible and false statements. To my overseas callers, forgive me, it was my bad in terms of not connecting your calls, but try that number again, please. It's 646-829-6672, and I can guarantee I'll get you onto LESCAN, the Chief Executive Officer of the Citizenship by investment unit. For those on the overseas line that were trying to get that your voice in, please do so now and forgive me in the interim for that little glitch. Again, 646-829-6672 is the number. You can ask SKN any question as it relates to the citizenship by investment unit, and in fact the number one brand in terms of the passport program. This message reads, "Good evening, Mr. Liburd and also Mr. Khan. This show has been very enlightening thus far. I have a question for Mr. Khan. Am I correct in saying, using the new correction facility, the prison, as the example, that if the developer is only able to sell the shares or units of investment for, say, US $75,000 due to competitive market conditions, the developer is still legally required to deliver to the government free of charge the prison asset and must also still have to pay all the government fees and charges." Did you get that question, Les?
I got a question, and the answer is absolutely yes. Whatever the developer is able to sell in the marketplace, he must be able to deliver government fees, and based on the mechanism that we have in place for ensuring that there is this run-in capital for completion. There's one other thing I'd like to point out. There is an oversight committee that was established to review this project. And this is made up of a number of members of the government, various government agencies who have oversight in the project management of the project. And they meet on a regular basis, they discuss the issues, they look at scheduling, and they are ensuring that there is a timeline that is followed. So it's not a willy-nilly process that has been put in place that we've just passed it on to the developer and say, hey, build as you want. It's there with controls, it's there with, like I said, the run-in capital, and yes, the government fees must be delivered on a sale of a unit of investment at whatever price is made.
Now, Les, in terms of the process, you made mention as well the process as it relates to skipper's assessment, the CIU's assessment, inclusive of the due diligence and so on. But this project that's been talked about, and the falsehood that's been mentioned as it relates to the project, it went to the cabinet, didn't it?
Absolutely. This proposal was in the works from about October last year, went through some iterations and went through negotiations and was in cabinet for approval, and did get approval in cabinet.
So it must be really troubling to anyone who would have had any part to play in the recommendations and as it relates to the iterations, to use your word, as it relates to the project. It must be troubling, isn't it?
From my perspective, we went to cabinet, there were discussions, there were questions, and the decision was made. And I think the facts are on the table, and that needs to be to be clear.
Okay, let's go back to the lines. Caller, you're live. Hello, caller.
Yes, that is. Good night, and how it now?
Could you turn your equipment down? Please turn your equipment down. Please turn your equipment down.
Yes, it's off. It's off.
Thank you very much.
It's
What's
off.
on your mind?
Okay. Okay. There's not. What's on my mind is this: that it's not with no citizenship or nothing. From since we spoke and I told you I wanted to come home, and no, I have booked my ticket for a long time. It ain't just now. But I would like to know what's the problem. I mean, what I have to go through to come home, because I hear now kind of stupidness on the radio, and I would like to know what do I have to do, because I am fully vaccinated +1, okay? And all my children know that they have to be vaccinated around me because of my health. So I would like to know what do I have to do to come home?
Well, you have to.
Because I already booked since before the start with this election and thing. I booked. So I would like to know what the procedure I have to go through to come home.
Well, as far as I know, still you have to complete the online immigration form. You have to upload your vaccination record. You have to upload the passport form, the biography page, I think it's called, with your picture and so on of the passport, and of course
of the passport.
Yes.
Okay, well, to tell you the truth, my Kitts-Nevis passport is also up. So that I have to do, but I have my American. So do I do my American?
Upload it by your page, yes.
Okay.
And then you have to get a current test, current COVID test, either a rapid test or PCR test.
A rapid test or
PCR test.
And then thing, because hearing them saying you have to wait for something and they have to tell you if you could come home.
That's not true. That's not true. But do as I just told you, and you go from there. Okay?
Okay, because I'm upset now because since December I wanted.
Okay, so do what as I said, and we go from there. Okay then.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a good night too.
Have a good night.
You too. Have a good night. Bye.
Let's go back to the line. Caller, you are live. Hello, caller. Are you there, caller? Yes, caller, you're live. Okay, we seem to have missed that call. Let's take this call. Caller, you're live. Hello, caller. Are you there, caller?
Good night.
Good night, my brother. How about that?
Good night.
Yes, you're live. Go right ahead, Mr. Politics. Good night.
First, I always want to thank God for the life. Thank God for the Federation of Kitts-Nevis, a country I born into and live into up to now. Second, I want to commend the gentleman there, Mr. Leston, because we CBI program banning about the politician here because they was with the government. And they was in there, and they're coming out and saying, connecting now. So, Mr. Leston, I want to thank you to come to clear up certain things for us, because by right, we are citizens of this program, this country, and by right, we got to know how the CBI program going, because it's our passport, and if anything happens, we as people, we as people of this country, got to know what's going on. So when I hear like those who are in the government coming out and saying kind of thing, using the political strategy to bring down the government and bring down Dr. Harris, saying kind of negative thing about the sale of the passport, talking about the prison cost $2 billion, and how a prison cost $2 billion. And all this, you put it at the press conference, Sean Richard and Mark Brantley, and I believe that those just to distract the people from the right thing that the government is doing to the ordinary man and woman in the country, and I believe they're going to fail because they was in government and they're coming out and saying they never know this and they never know that and they never know the other. So Who could trust them when they get in a government with the system and the farm getting government? We can't trust these people. And these people not to trust, brother. I believe that that's how the right man works out on the country. And I believe that the CBI program is a program that helps this country with the federation. And I believe that the CBI program is supposed to ban it for a politician. Because when other countries over here are going on in our little country with the CBI program, they might pull with the status. You understand? They might pull it where? And we among the number passport tells where uplift the country and whatever. So, brother, let's stand. I want to thank you to come and clear up this thing forth. And I hope the people of this country, especially the conscious-minded people, know that that's how it is demand for this funds to manage this country for the next 5 years. You all have a wonderful night. May God bless.
Have yourself a wonderful night as well, my dear brother. We go straight back to the lines. Caller, you're caller.
Yeah, good night. Question is for Mr. Kayan. I was wondering why half the employees still not appointed and where they don't be getting paid on time. They be having to go on the treasury, run down unit managers for their salary.
A caller, we're not hearing you clearly. Do you have your equipment? You're close to equipment? Just talk to the telephone and turn the equipment off. Could you?
Can you hear me better?
That's a little better, please. Yes.
Okay, so this question is for Mr. Kayan. I was wondering why half the employees are not appointed yet and why they have to be running down unit managers and going to the treasury for their pay up to Friday. They had this issue.
Who has an issue?
The employees.
Employees of whom?
He's referring to, yes, he's referring to a number of employees who are temporary employees with the Citizenship and Investment Unit.
Okay. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Caller, you're saying employees with the CIU?
Yeah, they're having issues with their pay. They be having to run their unit managers and get on the treasury to collect their checks. And also why half of them is not appointed at this moment.
Okay, I'll have Mr. Khan respond. Thanks a lot for your question. Any other question?
No, sir.
Thanks for your input, sir. Les, some of the
Yes.
employees not paid and some not appointed. Any?
Yes. There are a number of employees who are temporary employees within the unit, and as you may be fully aware, there is a process of becoming appointed or permanent within the civil service, and that goes through a process through Parliament. Obviously, a number of approvals that are granted for civil servants, etc. The unit has had a number of individuals who have been in there for a while, and it was only in the last month or two that we got agreement and confirmation that these individuals will be made permanent. Now, during the time that they were temporary, we were paying them directly into their accounts. So there was no going back and forth into the treasury and so on. We had straightened that out. But as we went through the process of making them appointed in the last week or so, the process involved our HR department, payroll department, having to put through these processes. And in this particular case and in this particular payroll, they had to go down and get their checks. But we were able to have the treasury give us all the checks in the unit. Staff didn't have to go down to the treasury to get their checks eventually. We were able to disperse them through the unit, and then they had to go to the bank to make the deposits. I think this is an anomaly, and it will correct itself in the next cycle.
So the matter is being resolved?
The matter has been addressed, yes.
Point. Thanks. Now, in relation to the benefits, I don't know if we spend much time, if any, on the benefits that have been derived in the past and are being currently derived from this program, CBI.
All right, so we can talk about benefits, but remember, when I speak about the benefits to the country, it's based on what cabinet has decided to use the funds for and through Parliament. So again, I would like to reiterate, all funds go into the consolidated fund, all revenues go into the consolidated fund. The unit has no discretion on where the funds are used and how it's used. That decision is made through the cabinet submissions, through Parliament, and so forth. But if we look at during the COVID period, the St. Kitts-Nevis Citizenship by Investment Program was one of the most active and most profitable CBI programs around. So we continue to generate revenue for the country, even at a time when the rest of the country and the rest of the world was not generating revenue. So you have to go back to and say, well, where did double salaries come from? Where did the PEP or STEP numbers come from? How did we do road maintenance? How did we do a second pier? There are a number of initiatives that the government has taken, and it's all driven partially by the revenue generated by the CBI. So to talk about the success of the CBI program, we also have to look around at what's happening in the country and where the benefits of these are being shown.
You mentioned Parliament several times, Les, and with specific reference to the St. Kitts-Nevis Parliament. But it reminded me that in the European Parliament, there were some issues raised as relates to citizenship by investment programs generally, and seem to have targeted in particular those in the Caribbean. What do we have to fear as we speak now? Because I understand the European Council, I think it is, has not approved whatever that bill went to the Parliament. Is there anything that we must fear going forward or fear now?
All right, so we need to understand a little about the European Parliament and the European Commission. So the European Parliament basically took an initiative, and it was represented in Parliament, that they should look at, that the European Commission should look at CBI programs. Their biggest concern is that the CBI programs within Europe is allowing people to come into each country because there's free travel, and that it's allowing people who may have money laundering issues, who may be criminals, who may be terrorists, and so forth. Now, this was all prompted through Malta and Cyprus, and Malta and Cyprus have had their issues with their CBI programs. Their due diligence was not strong enough. So the European Commission has now basically said, well, Malta and Cyprus need to shut down their CBI programs, and all other countries within the EU need to look at their CBI programs and close them down in due course. Now, as part of the initiative by the European Commission, they are beginning to look at CBI programs outside of Europe, and basically saying that if these programs have the ability to grant or to allow their passports to have visa-free access to Europe, they're putting Europe at risk. So if there isn't good controls, good processes around due diligence, around standards, that the third parties or third countries, as they call them, could lose their visa-free access to Schengen visa. And that's about 32 countries. So it is a risk, and I think it's something that we need to be looking at, and what we need to look at is how do we tighten up our programs, how do we assure our international partners that we are doing what, I wouldn't say what they ask, but we are doing solid due diligence and have solid processes in place to assure them that we're not allowing individuals who are maybe terrorists or maybe money launderers or criminals and so forth. So this is an ongoing process. I think I should draw attention to a small little country called Vanuatu. And Vanuatu had its program for a while. Their due diligence was zilch. They had no due diligence, but they were granting citizenship to individuals. And these individuals had visa-free access to Europe. And it was a few months ago, I think 6 months ago, that the EU basically said to Vanuatu, we are taking away Schengen visa. And they did. And the last I heard was that they have given them an ultimatum to straighten out their act by 2024. Otherwise, they'll permanently lose EU visa-free. And now, has that closed down their program? It has grossly reduced the revenue of that small island, but it has not closed down the program. I think we have to look at our programs in St. Kitts and Nevis and in the Caribbean, and we need to be very careful about what messages we are sending out. The noise that we're hearing right now is being paid attention to by the EU, by the US, by everybody, and therefore draws attention to our program, suggesting that we have issues and active criminal activity in our program. And this is a risk that we run with what is being said publicly.
Well, there's some comfort, though, in terms of, and I take your point, and I totally agree with you. But as you mentioned before, the cabinet looked at this particular project, and there was no dissent. You, no doubt, along with Skipper, presented the project to the cabinet. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes, and this is one member of cabinet had this to say.
When you think about how much it costs, it is a significant point. The project doesn't cost 2.4 billion. The shares that have been allocated can amount to that if they were able to sell all of them.
So at least you have support from a member of cabinet in terms of that particular project. Am I correct?
Yes, and this just reinforces, that statement reinforces the comment I made that it's difficult for a developer to sell at whatever price that we've identified, whether it's 175 or whatever. There are a number of factors in place that are driving this price down, and the developer needs to be able to complete the project, and we need to support them in going forward for two reasons: to complete the asset and to generate the revenue that we expect over the period of time.
Now, earlier you mentioned transformation, and we also mentioned the issues, or the issue that was raised at the European Parliament, although the European Commission, I didn't say Council, but the Commission, you're so correct, are not likely to support what the Parliament had put forward. But in terms of transformation, there has been quite a lot of transformation since 2015. We referred to the Hurricane Relief Fund, the Sustainable Growth Fund, and now the Alternative Investment Operation. But going forward, what do you see in terms of transformation so that we can even make this brand more sustainable?
I think we have to continue to work on our due diligence, strengthen it in different areas. I have some ideas, and we have put them forward. I think it's not a good idea for me to throw the ideas over there. Otherwise, I might let my competition know what we're thinking, and we would lose our position. So really, it's about process. It's about ensuring that we assure our international partners that we are doing what we can and that we are strengthening our process as we go forward.
Now, in relation as well to the Escrow and the bill that was passed, do you see any issues going forward in terms of completion of these projects? Do you see any issues going forward?
I have to say that since the implementation of the Escrow bill, there are a few projects that meet the criteria of zero escrow requirement. And these are done by developers who are at a stage of 75% or more. But still, there's a requirement in the escrow payout schedule that developers must keep at least 10% until completion of the project. And it's signed off on. And that sign off is done through a review by Skipper and the Skipper Technical Committee. They go to the site to make sure it meets the requirements for that extra 10%, and that we're able to ensure that that is complete. I think any new development coming into play must be aware of the escrow. They must be aware of the market conditions, have a certain amount of capital to start their project. And of the project should not be dependent on CBI.
Okay, let's go back to the lines.
But this question to Mr. Leston. Mr. Leston, how good the CBI program is controlling under this administration to the farmer administration when they was controlling it? Because you hear a lot of things out there going on now. Some people want the CBI in government now, out of government now. They was there, and they want the CBI program to control. I listen to Mr. Mark Brandy, and I feel like that money is the problem. We got a problem with money. So I would just like to know, under the farmer administration, this present administration now, from Dr. Douglas administration, how safe and good our CBI program is controlled right now to how we used to be before. Anyway, let's not be here.
Any response?
Okay, my response is that I cannot pursue the previous administration. I can only take it from the recommendations that we made back in 2014 and the recommendations that were implemented as we go forward. The program continues to be strong. The program continues to be profitable for the country, and will continue to be so as long as our agents and clients are confident and comfortable with the program. It is the job of the unit and the government officials to give assurances that the CBI program is solid, that we continue to function, that we continue to deliver on our promise of efficiency and effectiveness. And I think the revenue is going to come in as we go forward.
Okay, let's go back to the lines. It's 9:40. Call you live. Hello, caller. Call you live. Are you there, caller? Are you there, caller? Caller, you listen to the equipment. Telephone, are you there?
Hello?
Yes, you're live.
Hello, Patrick.
Yes, jam down.
Patrick. Yes, I would like to say one or two things to Mr. Lescan and ask a question.
Yes,
Mr. Lescan, now we have some rumors going around from former MPs. One to make the country feel like the program is offering this letter passport to a company who come here to do a development. And I find it to be really mischievous. And
these farmer MPs who looking forward to run this country, when they're going to be coming and want to feel they could damage the program, because it's damage, they're trying to damage the program. So I would like you to just leave the small man on the road and the country about what these things is all about, especially with the developers done with the new prison, because it ain't sounding good, and the street men have their own view and things there, because right now the prison should build and it must build. And I want to congratulate the Prime Minister to building that prison, because all the time they're not trying to bring down the prison. They're not going there. They know how people are living there. It's really terrible, man. You got big people sleeping on ground. Half of these MPs, when they go in the restaurant in the hotel, luxurious bed, men in there with a blanket and the ground sleeping. So, sir, you're doing a great job. I never met you before. I would like to meet you because I have some questions to ask you about the CBI. But in due time, I will get in touch with you. You have a good night. You deliver yourself well. And that's what straight talk is all about. We talk the truth to you. Have a good night, touches. This is Jam Down.
Have a good night, Jam Down, as well. Let's go back to the lines. Are you there, caller? Yes, caller, you're live. Are you there, caller?
Wait, in the fucking face.
Yeah. Call you live.
Greetings.
Greetings, sir.
Hello, good night.
Good night, my brother. How art thou?
I give in thanks, Ambassador. How your night is going?
Peaceful, man. Peaceful. Yours?
Little by little, me thankful for life. And good night to your guest. Your guest is who? The man who's over the CBI program.
That is correct. Mr. Les Khan.
And what his name is?
Mr. Les Khan.
Good night, Brother Khan. This is Rasta speaking. I have a question I would like to ask, please. I would like to know. Hello?
Go ahead, Rasta.
Yeah, okay. I would like to know, from you, expertise within the service of the program, would you say that the program is able to stabilize the economy as how we've seen, as the Prime Minister stated that he has surplus after surplus, or the program is giving the economy a bad state of driving a range of development? Hello?
Yes, I'll have him respond. Do you have another question?
I'm not close away, so that's why I'm trying to get him respond, please.
Okay. In terms of bringing stability to the economy, Les, that's the question the caller is asking. Do you want to respond quickly?
Certainly. The program has been successful, and the revenues that have been generated by the program.
Hello, Nancy, Brother Patrick.
Yeah, but you're creating some problems for me here. Yes, he's answering the question.
I can't hear you good. That's why I asked where you responding here.
Yeah, but yes, Rasaya.
Yes, Brother Patrick, that's the main course of radio.
So I'll relay his response to you. He says, yes, it is bringing stability to the economy.
He responded?
Yes, he did. He responded positively.
Well, I didn't hear him. I didn't hear him, so I thought about that. So you say he responded. Okay. Another thing I'd like to put forward here now. Well, I heard him make some statement saying that the CBI program could be under threat according to what we've been feeding out in information, and based on the information being feeding out, we got to be cautious and be careful how we pursuing this information, because the European is watching and the American is watching. Let me say, Mr. Khan, we don't trust America and the European. Now, I must have let these people who pursue all kind of evil plan against humanity to tell us how to deal with our own program. And I don't even trust the CBI program because it's not benefiting for poor people. Because if it was benefiting for poor people, we wouldn't be taking out for what's going on this stage when it comes to economical stability. And you know that to Mr. Khan, and you know that to Mr. Border Patches. All you need to put our people in a better state in life than just giving them handouts in these kind of jokey programming that the government them are insisting on saying that they're helping stabilizing poverty growth. You all ain't really ready to rise the people. I tell you, in your last discussion, it's time you rise the people, educate them in a proper and not bring party politics into the drive of our people. If you saw, I'm going to have a problem in the long run. Open up the mind of the people, let them understand what's going on with this program. The information was supposed to be shared on a proper stage. It's only till now, Mr. Khan could come to the area and say he said something. Where was he was all them 7 years ago? Where was he? How come he could not come to the front spot and say something about it?
Okay, we got
you. All have a safe night here.
Have a safe night as well. Okay, my brother. Okay, bless, my brother, bless. Do you care to respond in any way, Mr. Khan? In terms of the foreign direct investment being derived from the program, it must percolate throughout the entire economy.
I have to be very clear, and I've said it before, that the revenues generated, and we have generated revenues over the number of years, last 7 years, go into the consolidated fund. And the consolidated fund is managed by cabinet, and ultimately the disbursement of funds are done through the budgetary process, which is approved by Parliament. So decisions are made, priorities are made, and that's where it goes. I think we have to look around the country and we have to say, yes, there has been a stabilizing effect by the CBI program and the revenues that are derived from it.
Yes, and you said it all. You said it all. It's now 11 minutes before the 10 o'clock hour. We'll take a few more calls. Go back to the lines. Call your line. Hello, caller.
Hello. Patches.
Yes, you're live.
Patches.
Go ahead, caller.
Okay, yeah. Do you know a bad word come to the radio from the last caller? But anyway, Mr. Khan, I want to thank you very much for clearing up those misinformation that some people are peddling every day about the country. Because you said in October of 2021, the consultation about the New Horizon, the prison, it was in cabinet and it was discussed. And all of them who were in there present, they agreed with it. Well, how now? All of a sudden they come in talking about prison costs and all this kind of thing and who it belongs to and who it ain't belongs to. You see how people just try to mash up things, good things?
Okay.
That's why the Bible says, that tongue there is very dangerous. And the Lord hates a lying tongue. And if they don't stop telling lies, the good Lord can deal with them. So, Mr. Khan, thank you for straightening it up. Because a lot of people all over the world who don't know what's going on, they will believe the propaganda until they hear the truth. Thank you again. Have a good night, President Mr. Les.
Have a good night as well.
Thank you.
My dear brother. Let's go back to the lines. A caller. Hello, caller. You're live. Hey there, caller.
Patches.
Yeah, just turn your radio down, please. Turn your equipment down. Hey there.
Good night, Patches.
Good night, my dear.
Patches, good night. You could hear me?
I'm hearing you, but just turn your radio down.
Yeah.
Just
Okay, you don't. Me got time to wait. Me hand a radio, Patches. Patches, good night and good night. Forget here. Mister, you come in the right time. Don't go with Ras Ayo.
he got too much about he need to go and register and vote, and then that's
Make
it.
a point and forget Rasaya, please.
I'm gonna make it now.
Yeah, forget Rasaya.
He come in the right time because too much of rumors going on about passport selling and prison and that kind of thing. So you come in the right time, Mister. Don't bother about no 7 this years ago, and that's all I got to say. And something about the black factory, that some black factory getting black to pay the prison, and they're going to show CDC and them out of business. They will never chop CDC them out of business. If the black factory are in black, it's very good. Because when you have to rely on CDC, then they're going to run out of black, and then people going to be waiting on black to do other construction things. So good night, mister. You come in the right time. God bless you. Pay yourself. Too much of rumors going around. Bye.
Okay, thank you for your input. I'll perhaps take one more call, Les. I'll take one more call, and then I would allow you to give your wrap. And in the event you join us at lately, we do have with us in his final moments the Chief Executive Officer of the Citizenship by Investment Unit. Caller, you live. Hello, caller. Caller, you live. Hello, caller.
Night again, Ambassador. How your night is going again?
I am doing well. Well,
let me say this here, please, because I realize you got some people feel like nobody could
Rasayo, we're gonna end the program that way, right? We're not. If you have a question for Mr. Khan,
I would like to make something straight because you.
No. Do you have a question for Mr. Khan?
Statement. You didn't tell the person.
Okay, we'll take this other call. Caller, you live. Hello, caller. I do want to apologize. I do want to apologize, Les, for the quality of our calls tonight, but we certainly run out of time. We've had, I think, a very informative discussion, and I think it's only fair and proper that you will give your parting comments as we wrap in tonight's programming. And I want to, in the process, never touch as well the countries that would find themselves off limits, if I can use that term, in terms of accessing the Citizenship by Investment program of St. Kitts-Nevis, the Platinum program. I'm sure you perhaps want to tell us of those countries, if there are still any.
Yes, there are two specific countries that are under the sanctions, and one is Afghanistan and one is Iran, that we cannot take applications from those two countries. There are other countries like Cuba and North Korea that we will not take applications from either. So, as I said, we look at everything based on due diligence. Can we do the due diligence in a specific country? Right now, for example, we will not take Russians. We cannot take Russians because of the war that's going on in Ukraine. We cannot take Ukrainian applications because we cannot do due diligence in Ukraine. So wherever there are situations that limit our ability to do due diligence, we will restrict and control the number of applications coming in. We will also do enhanced due diligence, meaning that we go into a deeper dive. We ask our due diligence companies to look at specific things when the applications come in. So in a nutshell, we follow some very rigorous processes around the processing of applications within the unit, because at the end of the day, the decisions that are made, the recommendations that are made for citizenship can have a negative impact on the reputation of the country, of St. Kitts-Nevis, and it's our responsibility in the unit to make sure that the integrity continues, that we ensure that we are not granting citizenship to nefarious characters, and that we follow the process to the T through our international partners.
Well, in terms of your final wrap as well, Lescan, I want to give you an opportunity to reiterate the damage as well that is being done and can be done with the false, erroneous statements about the program and about a particular project, the new correctional facility, and the damage that these erroneous statements can do to the program in terms of its integrity and in terms of its branding. Perhaps I want you to address that again before we leave.
All right, so to recap specifically on the new correctional facility and the benefits to the country, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue that can be derived over the next 2 to 3 years from the sale of citizenship or the sale of units of investment under the new correctional facility. 2, the new correctional facility, when completed, will be an asset of the state. And we have to remember that the new correctional facility is a replacement for the one that was built in, I believe, in 1814 or something like that.
1840.
Yeah, 1840, and has gone through many attempts to be started, and we were able to do this through the alternative investment option. Now, every morning I get calls from my agents in the Middle East or in China or around the world. And the questions that they always come out of it is, what's going on in St. Kitts? Why are these statements there? Our clients are beginning to wonder whether they should be invested in St. Kitts and Nevis or whether they should be invested in a new correctional facility. And we have to spend a lot of time reassuring them that, you know, whatever is going on is internal, and that the product is a solid product. It has been approved. It's a legitimate product. There's legislation around it. And that the agents need to feel comfortable that their clients will not lose their citizenship if things change. So there is a lot of assurances that goes on as a result of the noise that we hear. And I've had agents who have said to me, you know, Les, should we be bringing our files into St. Kitts anymore? You know, we need to be thinking about sending our files into Antigua or St. Lucia at this point in time. And this is the damage, the potential damage that we have. The revenue streams can be impacted significantly by the noise that is out there. And I think we need to be very careful about the messaging and how it's reflected, because the clients, the agents are paying particular attention. They always listen and respond to what is going on in the country. And we've done a good job so far to reassure them and to ensure that they continue to send their applications here. But this is a very sensitive market, very competitive. And when the noise that we're hearing is played out, it's given ammunition to our competition to use that information to leverage and gain market share. And this is an issue that we have to contend with and we have to fight on a daily basis. So, you know, having the opportunity to explain on this program, it's reassuring that I know that my agents and clients and so on will be listening and will feel comfortable with the information that has been conveyed here.
But that's your clients, SKN. You have given them the reassurance, to use your words. But as someone with over 20 years experience in risk management, it cannot just be the clients alone. What would you say, in your party words, to those who are making the noise?
I will say that we have to look at the risk that we have in the noise that is there and the impact on what we consider to be a very successful program in the Caribbean. This program is the #1 program in the Caribbean and in the world, and we cannot afford to damage that. And again, mitigating risk, as you put it, is about managing the message. So we have to make sure there is a positive message in this, and the stability of the program will continue over the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years that we may have. I think we have bigger fish to fry, and that is the EU and the likes, and we need to be focused on that. How do we assure or reaffirm the program with our international partners?
Well, that's our story for tonight. And let's scan neither Ian Patches Liburd is gonna change that. I see my phones are going. I am tempted, just tempted to take this final call. If you can use 30 seconds caller, can you?
Sort of lie, deviating from the truth. But if I may elaborate, the CBI program, as I heard, has been very successful. And there are surplus upon surplus. Now, look at the country as a whole, and it includes St. Kitts-Nevis. Now, look at the poverty level in St. Kitts. Look at the distress of hardship in the country. I'm not even going to bring in COVID because COVID impacts the whole world and it impacts the country. Now, if the CBI program has been so successful, what happened to the dynamic thinkers to say, okay, every newborn child since the CBI program was established and being profitable, why couldn't they give the children a start of, say, at least $1,000? Every newborn child, $1,000 in the bank, and it will stay there for maturity time. I mean, sometimes you may say, when you reach 18, you can utilize that money. Another thing, why can't the hospital be advanced, whatever it was and whatever it can be? So the best will always yet to come in every shape or form. And there are multiple to add. But in a concept like that, the CBI program is successful. It's not for one man. It is for the country. It is for the people. It is per capita. That is where a good investment would be made with the CBI money. No. Whatever is the expenses and whatever is their balance, why can't there be transparency so that the country, every citizen can know the country's wealth, rather than it's like classified information and it's only used for the interest and the gatekeepers. Got to be more transparent with the CBI money. The CBI money is not one person money. The CBI money, and mind you, it's a good thing. I'm glad for that. Okay. But transparency and fairness for each individual, each citizen of the Federation. Thank you for allowing me.
Thank you very much, caller. We did, in fact, I say 30 seconds, but I always happy for interventions like that one. And I do have our final email. It says, hi, Patches. Let us ask let me ask you a serious question, considering you're a former MP and Minister of Public Works. If given the option, would you opt to use money from the Consolidated Fund to finance state infrastructure projects like a prison or a hospital or a school, or would you use the alternative investment option where a private company provides such a project free of charge and where the government also earns hundreds of millions of dollars in fees? Well, that was for me, SKN, and certainly I will opt for the privately funded, state-owned a component of the project where there's no capital outlay from the government, where you don't have to go into the treasury to use the people's money to get these assets. So it's the assets and the government fees, the revenue, which are important. I'll give you the final word. Les.
Absolutely. The intention was to be able to fund state-owned state projects, government-mandated projects, without going into the government coffers. And I think we've achieved it in this manner at this point in time. And as we go forward, there would be priorities that will be set by the various, by cabinet and determine which one goes next or thereafter.
Well, thank you very much, SKN, for agreeing to take part in our program tonight. It's your first time on Straight Talk, and I trust and hope it won't be your last time. We are a friendly people. All we do is ask for information. I do apologize for the quality of our calls tonight, but I do want to thank you. And for those who may have joined us late, we had a conversation with SKN, the Chief Executive Officer of the St. Kitts-Nevis Citizenship by Investment Unit, originally from TNT, Trinidad and Tobago, but he's one of our own sons here, having transformed the program over the years and doing quite well. Again, we say thank you, SKN. That's the way we're going to end it, my Straight Talk family, because my time is done and I've got to run. I want to thank Almighty God for guiding our conversation tonight. And as always, I want to thank you, the callers. I want to thank you, the emailers. I want to thank you, the many listeners on social media. Just remember, you are the ones who make Straight Talk. And for that reason, I say a big, big thank you. Until we connect on Thursday for another edition of Straight Talk, I say, God bless you all. Be good to yourselves and all whom you meet. Remember, whatever your mind conceive, that you will achieve. You just got to believe. My dear family, let's thank you again. We're going to keep moving on. Bye-bye.
Thank you.